Hello.
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 Hi, Kira. Hi, Fanny. Welcome to this live thing that we're doing with you now. We want to talk about something a little bit differently. We did something with the team, but Fanny and Kira did a wrote a wonderful article on navigation, and I would love to talk about it. And it's right now it's available on the website. But I am pretty sure we can talk about navigation for hours and hours and hours. And just wanted to geek with you for a couple of minutes with navigation and just talk about it. So yeah, let's do this thing. Do you want to share maybe the article and we can talk about 2 3 things? But maybe my question was why you wanted to write something about navigation for a while. I saw
Great
some of the
question.
brainstorm, but why?
Yeah, Fanny, why do we do that again?
Yeah, why?
No. Honestly, navigation, I feel like we should have done as the very first deep dive in the UX pattern. Navigation is so core to the information architecture, the placemaking aspect of your system. It's your first. It's the first way you have to express to your audience and your public, your users, what you're offering and like the extent to which your offering goes. And if that's not clear and if that's not solid from the start, you already create like confusion and kind of set a scene that's kind of a bit, subpar, and then it's hard to fix. So yeah, for me, navigation is the one thing you should always start with. But of course, especially in enterprise projects grow. Projects need to be scalable, and then features come in, and then it becomes messy. So I always have to keep it top of mind.
Yeah, and I think too for product specifically, you see that a lot of companies don't necessarily try to describe every single thing that their product does. They try to get you in there, right? They try to get you into the product, like at least a registration for 7-day trial or whatever, and the actual experience of being in the app and seeing the navigation actually tells you what it does in a more real way than like a kind of vague description on a landing page or something like that. So it really is a foundational stuff, and we usually start with it when we're actually deciding to.
I think I start my career with navigation as an information architect at the beginning. This is what we always start with. I remember the first years I think we love just watching Amazon change their navigation every 2 3 weeks and trying to understand how they were doing big menu and things like that. And yeah, navigation is pretty much everything right now. I can flip the table pretty quickly when they're an app. I don't know how to navigate in it. I can stop using it like that just because of the navigation.
And I feel like navigation is like a reflection of how structured and well thought your business is and your services are. Because when you think about it, let's say for Amazon, they started with books and then they added something else and then something else and became this incredibly huge thing. And so if that's neat, you are, as a user, you're automatically viewing the business's organization and like their way to deal with information and to hierarchize the stuff. And so yeah, it's like,
doesn't mean that your navigation should be the exact snapshot of your organization or the key, right?
No, yeah. But maybe if you can, maybe
sales,
it can be a good thing.
Product. Yeah, you can feel an organization just by how they're, you can navigate a website. That's profound, but it's true for real.
Oh, it's true. Yep. Yeah, I think you always get a really big clue about how I was going to say how they think about their users, but I would actually step that back and say if they think about their users.
Whether they do it at all. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I see a lot of projects starting with navigation, but I always in my mind had this dream of finishing with the navigation. Trying to go to the middle of the main task, the primary task, figure it out, and work backward to understand how to get there, and not the other way around. Am I crazy, or I am crazy? Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, I am. But we're always trying to figure out the navigation first, and then we can start designing. But sometimes you have to do that in parallel.
No, but I would say it depends.
Mm.
But we're supposed to do a bingo with these expressions that designers always say. But let's say I can see it being beneficial to like start zoomed in to like a really specific task that these users constantly do. They always go right straight to that thing, and that's the one thing they do, and they go out of the app. Like if you can identify that, I guess you could work backwards from like, okay, if this is the core of my product and like this is where all the activity happens, first of all, what is this? Is it a task? Is it a place? Is it a, like an object or an action? And then you can see what else measures, like what else should live at the same level of that, and then kind of build up your nav. Or I can see it happening.
Yeah, I think that it would also be a way to, especially with viewing experiences or web experiences where you're reading, you can't assume that anyone is ever going to use your nav, and that it's going to be relevant to the style that they interact with the web. Like I've seen in user testing lots of times where all of our work on the navigation didn't really matter because they're just a searcher and more power usery almost in that sense, and less power usery as well. But they're just searching. They're like, I don't care how you think about how stuff is put together.
What's the common mistake in navigation from your standpoint? When you think you wrote about it, so without looking at the
Sure
article,
did.
yeah.
Oh yeah, there's so many, so many mistakes.
Well, a big one would maybe kind of related to the reflex people have to search. That might be a symptom of the nav or the overall information architecture being unpredictable. Because that's a problem that is easy to occur. Like if your nav has in it like stuff coexist that are in different mindsets, like that are framed in different mindsets. Like let's say you have a menu and then all the items are kind of supposed to be the same level of, let's say, importance, but then one of them is like a super small page, the other is like a super big database. And if it's like unpredictable and you can't see the patterns, I guess that's how you might want to resort to searching, because you can't clearly see the logic and can't know what to expect. So predictability, I think that's a big one.
Yes. Yeah. We saw a really wildly unpredictable nav a little while ago where so there was kind of within the software there was like this primary object, which is like a project, and within a project there was a wizard type of navigation, and depending on the state of the project you would end up somewhere else if you clicked on it. So if you had completed it, you would be on like a completion type of page. But there was more steps after that, but you could have ended at, step 7, but then you'd end up back at step 5. So there was this thing where it was like every time you clicked on it, it felt like, oh, it did remember where I was last time, or it didn't remember where I was last time. So there's like that concept there of remembering where someone was in the navigation path that they're going through, compared to giving them they choose where they want to go. So that was like a wild one, because I think because of that lack of predictability on where you would end up, people always anticipated like a struggle. Every time you click on it, you're like, oh God, okay, then I'll try to, and so it was a really interesting thing.
Why do you think it end up like that? Is it because what's the reason behind?
Well, in the case that I'm talking about, it was kind of the evolution of the software, and the way that users actually used it had kind of moved on, and
Hmm.
the navigation was still as it was originally. So it had this overlying assumption that it's like a wizard experience, and the first time they would go through it, it was, but it ended up being the work iterative. So you'd go back and you'd kind of dart around, but that they didn't know that was going to be a thing when they built it originally. So it's kind of just like a bit of a disjoint between, users and their actual behavior, or as they evolve it, and not having touched it for a while.
It's true that we don't remember. We don't. It's not. Users are evolving with the product, and we find sometimes we forgot about it. And the product has to involve with the user also. That means you have to be closer to them. And yeah, I see what you mean. We can see that in the iOS, for example, that iOS grew with the users, and now it's starting to be a little bit weird and strange. But at the beginning, everything was step by step, and very evident. But after a while, we grew up with it, and we understood some other things technically. Yeah. What other obstacles or common mistake that you think?
Well, something I can relate to that, like evolving with the users and just keeping track of how their perception of the product is growing, is the words that you use. Because navigation is really about, you got to be so effective with the words that you use, because you don't want to be putting full sentences in there. It has to be like tiny and clear. And the way you in your org name things might grow differently than how your users internally in their teams name the same things. So choosing the right words, and just also keeping an ear out to how, via interviews or again like user tests, how they seem to be calling the places that you think have another name. Sometimes it's surprising how people call the places. There's
So
maybe, I don't know, like an example could be like, you in your mind as the product team, it's always been the dashboard, and let's say you do a couple of interviews and they all call it the homepage. That's maybe a small one, but if it's that can happen in like really core places and have really different words, and
it's
then
true
you
that
just don't know what you're talking about with them.
Yeah. And like the other thing that mistakes with the words, that I've seen too, is like people assume that the users are going to care about like their branding, and they're going to be like, go to this thing that they call some kind of like obscure weird brand name, but it's actually just a functionality. So, or it's a, it's a function that you'll be able to achieve, or like a goal you'll be able to achieve to the person using it. It's not, whatever your weird sub brand is. Like, so, so getting really attached to the branding side, it's, and kind of like sacrificing clarity for marketing is a thing
how
for
would you
sure.
overcome that? By the way, how you would discover that you're using not the right words, and interviews are one thing. Are they only the only method that we can learn more about how people are navigating?
You can watch people.
You can watch
I
people.
think you can really watch them. Like, hey, if you wanted to do this thing, what would you do next? In like usability testing type of things, even one-click type testing, like really low input kind, or like low setup testing methods. Like, I find navigation and wording and labeling and all that stuff is great in a conversation.
It's the only way I've seen. I've tried A/B testing, but most of the words are came from the team and not the users. And when we did the A/B testing with the words that we heard from interviews, it was very very interesting. So yeah, seeing them in the actual context of use, how they're when they're sitting on at their desk, whatever, and how they express what they are about to do. I'm not saying I'm about to, clicking on this, but I'm about to do this. This is sometimes the word that you should use. So not just interviewing, but watch them, using the tool in a broader context is very powerful.
Watching them use it is always so eye-opening. But even not in the context of an interview, and I've done it in the creepy context of what's the app called? It just records sessions, and you can kind of notice behaviors on there. Is it Hotjar?
Hotjar.
Hotjar, yeah.
And you can see things that people do, like they bypass some of the navigation issues. Let's say a certain page is like super hidden in a second or even third level. They will have that bookmarked on their browser and will never go through the homepage, or like they'll never go through the typical path or the ideal path that you've designed. And they just have like these 3 bookmarks, and that's how they do it. And let's say they even open it up split screen. They've got like 3 windows, and that's how they work. And you can never know that unless you actually open it up and take a look. And it's always so interesting.
It is.
You did something absolutely. You did something wonderful about the anatomy of navigation, and people clicked on it. And can you share a little bit more about the different kind of navigation, object, task, workflow? Can you show that? It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. We do have that in the piece here. So, anatomy of navigation. We kind of pointed out 3 broad types. We've got object-oriented, task-oriented, and workflow-based. But really, we've kind of found that they can all kind of co-live. Some parts of your app might be like wizardy, step-by-step experiences. Some others might benefit from having an object-based, nomenclature, and others, you can be flexible. But yeah, I kind of really like this GIF because you can see how the very same places in an app can be restructured just based on how to best kind of cater it to your users. And the big idea in here is kind of you got to be aware of what your users are coming in to do, like their role in their organization and their access levels. Because I feel like a basic level to look at it is like some people will have edit access, some people will have viewing access, and you've got super admins. And so if not everyone has edit access, you want to have a clear place that's kind of all the analytics. Everyone can come in and view some kind of dashboard and customize it, whatever. And so it might be better for you to have it like object task oriented that way, so that it's based on what type of action you can come in and do. But that's it. You gotta really have to cater it to your crew and know who you're designing for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like just kind of touching on that like merging of the type of point, I think like a great example is a city website where do you care about the fact that your parking ticket is under bylaws and parking bylaws and infractions and pay your parking ticket? Not really. You're just like, okay, open up the nav. It says pay my parking ticket. There you go. I don't care about all of that other stuff. But if you were looking at like community events, you'd be like, oh, community events, community type of events, blah, blah, blah. So you'd maybe go more object oriented for different use cases and stuff.
Great. I see breadcrumbs. In this article. So are you for that, or we should just kill it and never see breadcrumbs again? What do you think? What's the how most of the time how we not implement breadcrumb rights, or what we should take care of when we're developing in breadcrumbs?
I'm coming.
Yeah.
I've got a hot take on that one.
Oh, that's true. Back button. Oh, yeah. That's a sign. That's a red flag. And when there's a back button.
I mean, how many options do you need to go back for? Well, yeah, breadcrumbs, I
15.
guess, are divided. The opinions are divided.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah. I'm trying to be against breadcrumb because I believe that we don't, navigate in a linear way, and
Good point.
yeah. Maybe at the beginning it was, some kind of an experience where we go like in a library and we have a home and all. But last 20 years ago, now we can, and even in mobile, I can click on the link and go into a specific interactions a screen inside my app. So why do I need to know a breadcrumb? Yeah.
I've got a hot take too.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there are some really good use cases or prems. Like if you imagined like especially in the enterprise UX kind of context, um, if you were doing some kind of investigating or troubleshooting things and you have a lot of information rich pages, or like you're looking at an audit trail or something that's just complicated, or you have things like objects in your database that are like numbered and have a unique ID, but they don't actually have any descriptor.
Hmm.
So if you had like, so say you were in a lab, you were working on samples or something like that, you'd want to know that it's part of project 125, sample 3-1, and, you know, drop of sample 25 point blah, blah, blah. So you'd need to know that context to know what you're looking at
I'm willing
in
to
that
change my mind,
specific
but
case.
it feels a little more like information architecture, explaining where you are. That's why
Mm,
breadcrumbs are so useful right now. It's less about navigation, but more about, yeah, yeah, the context of where you are.
like,
That's true.
where am I? What's
Yeah,
happening?
yeah.
Yeah, well, especially in like um, the opposite of what Benoit you mentioned, like non-linear. You might
Mhm.
have, if
We
you're really
might have.
lucky, an enterprise app that's non-linear, and it's just like I don't know, an infinite canvas, and you can pull up stuff from anywhere, and that can be cool. But typically, files have like folders have files inside of them, and there is this drill down that happens. And so if in the apps I've worked on, not having a breadcrumb would mean so many more clicks to go back 1, 2, or 3 levels, because you can just
Mm.
see it. I feel it is old school. Like it's one of the very first. It's part of the very first interfaces we ever saw. There's always been breadcrumb, but it works.
Hmm. I see also customization, and I think it's a. I found it in the past experience. It is a great way to let people tell us what the navigation should be. It's not just a bonus. It's a powerful tool for an organization to understand how people are seeing your product, how they are, and let them bookmark something inside your product and do some analytics and learn from how they are mixing and matching and hacking the navigation.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so many clues in there
Oh yeah.
on the use cases and stuff, and there's different situations that I think we've probably all been in where user testing, to the degree that you get really good coverage across all the personas, all the types of companies,
Mm,
all the things in something really complicated or something that's like kind of locked down because people are secretive about it or whatever. Like you you can use things like this to account for the fact that you can't map
it's
all of
true.
the cases. Um,
For big
and maybe
organization,
they're
yeah.
maybe they move and maybe they shift according to the mindset of the person and all of that too. So it should be a flexible approach.
Hmm.
Yeah, you also had here. I remember from our brainstorm, you had this idea of like in a dashboard, you might not have like a dashboard is kind of you can see it as the entry points to a bunch of different analytics parts, but it can be really like data informed navigation, because the dashboard will always surface
Mm.
like, I don't know, the most recent thing or like the most relevant thing for you at that point, at that moment. And then the navigation is like never the same, but it's always relevant to whomever's logging in and coming into the dashboard.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't even know where you want to go unless you have the data. In some cases, right? Like you got no freaking clue, and you want to gravitate towards the emergencies or the changes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you can create the data. Yeah. What do you mean by progressive disclosure? Disclosure, by the way. Yeah.
I muted myself because there's some noise.
No, I mean
around me.
progressive disclosure. What do you mean by that? Can
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like an interesting concept that we talked about.
Yeah.
Fanny's gonna let people flip about our AirPods.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, progressive disclosure is interesting too, because sometimes you can kind of treat it in a few ways, but like sometimes it's really nice to just get people to the place that they know that the thing that they need is in there, rather than present all the things so quick. So you see on e-commerce websites, for example, they'll have like a mega menu, and it'll be like, clothing, tops, blah blah blah, all of that stuff. But those are all things that we're really familiar with. So you actually would like having it like right in your face is probably a good approach. But in a lot of cases, you're maybe moving across an application into places that are more unknown, and you just sort of know where that thing is, but you don't necessarily you maybe want to land on a bit of a homepage type of scenario to then navigate from. So there's like different ways to kind of consider progressive disclosure, I think, in an interface. And I think that's one use case, especially if you have the situation where like the secondary navigation items or like secondary places you can go to are pretty abstract and weird. You might land on a landing page of that area and then be able to actually explain what they are rather than try to smash it all into the label.
And Omnibar keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts. We can talk about it for a couple of hours again. It's the thing that you don't want to implement until you use it and say, "Oh, why?" Yeah, it's when a user is already familiar with an interface, having them to be more efficient in a process can be done via Omnibar and keyboard shortcuts. Yeah, we forgot about it, but yeah, it's very powerful for power user that we are trying to please every time. But yeah,
The number of times I've tried to squeeze an omnibar into the scope of an app,
and a keyboard shortcut, even just
so
a
close.
simple keyboard shortcut for search, just hit this and you'll search.
Well, keyboard shortcuts, if you're building a web app, good luck. With Kira, we looked up like which keyboard shortcuts are already used by the majority of browsers. There's not much left to be intuitive about it. I'd say you would want your Command F, but it's busy. You would want your Command Space, it's busy, or like the most known ones are already reserved by the OS and the browser. So you'd have to like recreate a whole new muscle memory for your users. But if they really want it, maybe it can work.
Yeah. Yeah, that mapping was hilarious because we did it between Microsoft and Mac and browsers. So we're like through the OSs and stuff. And we were just like, well, I think we're just going to slowly back away. But I'm sure that browsers just can overwrite those and take away your other keyboard abilities if you're focused in the thing. But they were different across the OSs too. And we were like, how do we make keyboard shortcuts that are like appropriate for these sets of people on these different computers?
And now you have keyboard shortcuts, but you have also gesture and touch shortcuts and all. That they are now more important. No, I'm always tapping my two finger to undo something now on every app.
I do that on paper. I do that in my notebook now. I've broken my brain, honestly. But it's
That's
so
hilarious.
useful, and you integrate it so quickly because it's so natural.
Yeah, it is. It can be very natural. So thank you for this great article. It's available on our website, and please sign up. We'll have a lot more, UX patterns analysis. What's the goal behind UX patterns analysis, Kira? By the way,
To really give people like self-serve, useful documentation on how to build stuff and the things to consider. Our intention is to really give a bunch of best practices and help you understand, but also to help you think about the problems a little bit differently as well. So that's why most of the articles, they start with prompts on when you're designing this thing, things to talk to your team about, things to talk for, between devs and designers about, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's our intention behind them. And to just get some of this info out of the brain, just to right, Fanny?
It's therapeutic. It really is.
It's a word.
You're like, wow, we know a lot about this. We've done this before. This is weird.
And it became a reference for the team also. Sometimes we're all reading, our own articles. Sometimes, yeah. What's next, by the way? What's the next article? Do you know? Because I know it. I'm testing you. What's the next article?
The next article for us to start writing?
And it will be published like a couple of 2
errors.
weeks. Errors? What do you mean?
When things go wrong.
Things can go wrong. So
things can go wrong.
Just sign up and just follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all everywhere, and on YouTube, and we'll talk about it. Thank you, Fanny. Thank you, Kira. That was fun. Let's do this again in 2-3 weeks.